Hello everyone, I am Tacet, and today I'm going to be going over all of the troop changes in version 3.05 in Gems of War, kind of go over which ones are good to use now, which ones aren't really worth it anymore, and basically just my opinion on all of them. So I will be starting with the first two, both of which the consoles did not get, but I believe the consoles did get every other one that I mentioned within here. For console, you only got a 22 mana reduction to your famine, but on PC Mobile, it was reduced down all the way to 24, and instead of having Jinx, he now has Cursed, so that does make it a lot less effective. As far as using this troop now, I definitely would advise refunding it. It is refundable, and I would definitely do so because it does have some pretty nice trait stones on it that a lot of other troops use. As far as invading with it, Famine would still be worth it, but as far as defending, it is basically dead for defending with due to its excessively high mana cost. It's not going to be able to focus down the mana quick enough. The only time it may be worth it is when we get the mana choices for the AI, because then we could set it so it would keep getting Famine mana. But since PC Mobile did not end up getting that, there really is no point in using Famine on defend for now on. It's going to be too counterable by draining troops, and most often than not, it's never going to get a single cast off, particularly if you use two of them. There's also really no point in using multiple of them now due to not having Jinx anymore. I guess maybe for his aspect of Famine, but at that point you're better off just sticking with a Famine Death. Next up is the Cabarrus. This one also got a pretty heavy nerf. Instead of a 50% chance to devour, it now has a 40% chance. It also is indirectly nerfed by the fact that Barrier can now stop devour, so that's going to make it even weaker. And on top of that, it only has a 50% chance to summon a ward, so now it's on the same line of Keeper of Souls. So if nothing else, maybe Keeper of Souls became a little bit more viable, but you won't be seeing as much Forest Guardian with Cabarrus anymore. So two of the most meta teams have kind of just died out instantly due to those. I am really grateful for that. I'm going to miss using Famine, but other than that, it's a change that was really needed because both of them were being used way too much. But on to Catcher's the Bull, it is not useless anymore. It now deals half of its damage to adjacent enemies. Basically how you use this now is you target the second slot and then the fourth slot, and that basically kills out the entire team because your second shot will kill both the second and the first slot. The first slot because you hit it with some skulls, the second because hopefully you'll have enough stats to one-shot it, and then it would half hit the third troop. So with the third troop half hit, you would then use it on the fourth troop, and that would then kill off the fourth troop and the third troop. So essentially, assuming you can buff Catcher's the Bull fully, and they don't have any kind of summons or anything on death, basically all you do, cast that second, cast that fourth, and then you win the game. That does take a little bit longer due to the fact that you would need at least 44 mana for that, and you'd likely have some mana generators, maybe like an Alchemist Hellcat or Green Seer Giant Spider trying to do its mana. But other than that, it's actually pretty effective now, and of course all the traits still the same. Behemoth, not really too much of a benefit now. The only change it has is now it gains twice as much life. It gains 8 life whenever it takes 4 or 5 times matches. It's definitely going to have by far the highest life of anything that has Impervious, and that's the main thing that you would use it for, is for a very high life troop to counter out Impervious. Other than that, still a pretty average troop. Average damage cost, nothing really excelling at other than having an excessively high HP with Impervious, which if that's needed for your team, then put it in. Otherwise, it's still kind of average of a troop. So next up, none of these were actually changed directly, but there were 2 changes as I mentioned. One of them is Deathmark now has a 1-turn delay, so now Deathmark will never kill on the first turn. Also, if you place Deathmarks on an enemy and then on the very next turn place another Deathmark on the enemy, it will keep refreshing the 1-turn delay of it not being able to die. So technically, if you kept deathmarking the enemy every single turn somehow, it would never die to deathmark because you would keep refreshing the 1-turn delay that it has. But you would also be refreshing the timer so that it doesn't go off. Basically, now you would want to deathmark about once every 1 every 3 to 5 turns approximately, to make sure that they still keep the death mark, but also make sure you don't over death mark them. This will also happen quite a bit with anything that has death touch. You don't want to take skulls on them every single turn. If you have a troop with death touch, you'd want to wait about 3 turns, if not longer, just to make sure that you don't keep hitting the 1-turn delay on it. But yeah, death will be a little bit weaker due to that. Queen Aurora, now a little bit stronger. As I mentioned, Barrier now stops Devour. So basically how this works is, let's say a Cabarrus, for instance, it has 2 different instances. It throws the roll chance of it doing its devour, and then it does its damage. So basically what would happen is if a Cabarrus gets a devour on this, for instance, it will use the barrier for the devour and completely negate out the devour, but then it will take the damage from the ability itself. So that's basically how barrier will interact with it. So definitely very, very strong. The only thing that barrier cannot protect against is with oh, what's it called? Cabarrus. I mean, it's not Cabarrus, sorry. With Kraken. Kraken can still hit. The main reason for this is because it does its damage and then it does the devour chance. Every other devour in the game does its devour chance before doing its damage. So Kraken's about the only thing that can still get through the barrier. Not to mention his legendary trait will break all the barriers anyways when you get a extra turn. Next is Jargonian Monk. Similarly, no actual change to him, but because barrier got buffed, he's now stronger indirectly from that, and definitely a really, really nice troop to have early on in the game if you find you have a low lose rate to people who are stronger than you, because barriers will protect against one instance of damage, and you can just keep stacking this over and over again. So regardless of if they're doing like triple the amount of damage than you would still be able to protect yourself fully to everything except really skull spam for the most part. So definitely really nice using Jargonian Monk as a newer player, as well as for newer players. Zephyrus finally got a really nice buff. Instead of having a 3 times boost ratio, he now has a 10 times boost ratio. Biggest boost ratio change they've ever done to any troop. It definitely drastically changes him and makes him quite a bit viable in earlier on in the game. At like level, let's say if you're like a level 100 with this, or even a little bit lower, you could easily be hitting on average about 40 to 60 damage due to hitting all of the yellows. So that is some pretty decent damage for early on. Later in the game, he's still basically a useless troop. But if you happen to get this epic earlier on, definitely worth using. Maybe even using it with the combo of Ranger and the Stone Spirit thing, because all of those can do split damage, and all of them have relatively good boost ratios on top of that as well. So next up we have, let's see, I believe this one. And we have a bunch of the null changes, or whatever those things are called. The, forget exactly, but we are going to be, they have a bunch of these triple damages now. Some of them didn't have it before. Now, of course, like Savage Hunter now has it on green, has a higher mana cost because of it. All of them got a slightly higher damage as well. This one does it on yellow mana now, which it didn't previously, and also has a slightly higher damage. I don't believe any of their traits were changed. A couple of the troops also got troop type changes, but I'm not going to be going over those because they're just pretty minimal and won't really be coming into play that much. As far as Scale Guard, it now no longer has Empowered, but it now, a new trait is added called Swift, which will start troops at 75% mana. So now there's Fast for 50%, Swift for 75%, and Empowered for 100%. This will make it quite a bit weaker, and on weeks that it has 50%, it will no longer be wrecking havoc and be the strongest troop in the game, basically any week that it has 50%. So yeah, that has been switched, and a lot less effective. Definitely worth refunding, though I don't believe they even have the refund option open for this one, which is kind of odd. Yeah, he's not really worth that many traits anyway, so not being able to refund him isn't really going to make too big of a difference. This is why I numbered them. I can't tell which ones I have or haven't done. But, of course, all the trolls got reworked. All of them are really, really good to use now. The reworks that they all have is they now have a 3 regeneration instead of 1. Trolls are also the only troops in the game that are going to be getting this regeneration of 3 per turn. So really good against anything that can do true damage now that all of them... that's weird, why doesn't he have it? But now that all of them have that 3 regeneration, Rock Troll also didn't get the fix for that too. I think they forgot to actually even update him. But they all are supposed to have a 11 mana cost now, which all of them do, except Rock Troll for some reason. I guess they forgot this guy. They left him behind, but as far as their ability, they now create an additional 4 after they double. So let's say there's 8 on the board, they will then double that into 16, and then they will add an additional 4, so that would be a total of 20 of that color on the board. The sweet spot for doing it is 8. I would advise waiting until at least 8 are on the board before you try casting them, mainly because that's generally you will end up getting the extra turn whenever you use that at that point. What's also pretty notable to use is a Dark Troll with a Rock Troll, mainly because they are currently the only 2 trolls that can loop mana between each other. Very similar to that of a Alchemist Hellcat combo or a Green Seer Giant Spider. They can basically infinitely generate you your mana. So that's something that is new. That's pretty useful. And down we go to this one. We have the Apothecary change. Now more in level with some of the other select gem converts. So Apothecary may be used quite a bit more now. She used to be considered kind of like a early game Mercy because they both had a 12 mana cost and cleanse to everything. But Apothecary could, in many instances now, be better than a Mercy, particularly if you don't have it traded. You'd pretty much just always go with the Apothecary then. But it now has a 10 mana cost, and it gets to transform browns and cleanse all allies in doing so, making it... actually, I forgot to double check this. I believe that might be the cheapest cleanse all in the game right now. Technically, Herdmaster would still be slightly cheaper because it's +1 on its yellow, but as far as actual mana cost, I believe that does make it the cheapest now, unless I'm forgetting one. So yeah, 10 mana cleanse, pretty nice. Of course, Mercy on first turn technically also has the cheapest because it has Empowered, so you'd automatically have it, though you don't always need it like on the first turn or two. But in those cases, Apothecary would probably be quite a bit better to use with all your brown troops. For some reason, I have Behemoth again, but yeah, the only change he has is he now gets the extra life on his final trait for double the amount, 8 life every extra turn. So now a pretty big change to Summoner. It now summons a Bone Daemon. For any of you who haven't seen this yet, it's coming in on Monday into the drop pool. I forgot to read that correctly, and I opened about like 200 gem keys and about 1,000 glory keys, not knowing that, hey, he's not in the drop pool. Well, he is coming on Monday. That is confirmed. He's definitely 100% not in it now. Wait till Monday. But he now has a 6 life gain to all allies instead of a 4, and he summons Bone Daemon. Bone Daemon is a brown-blue 12 mana cost Daemon. I believe it's Undead Daemon. And I forget all of its traits. I know it has Death Touch. And as far as its ability, it deals damage to a target and deals double if there's a Bone Storm, and then creates a Bone Storm. It will not automatically always do 2 times every single time because the Bone Storm triggers after the check for the Bone Storm. So the initial hit will not do the double damage. But yeah, definitely a lot better than the ghoul that I used to summon before. Plus this new troop uses brown and blue, so 2 colors that it doesn't use instead of just the 1. So will be quite a bit stronger. And it also has, like many of the orcs, to change of getting one of the new orc traits, and now it has orc armor, in which it gains 5 armor every single time it takes damage, and it still has Jinx. So Summoner might actually be a good red-purple replacement for summons. Wyvern basically got everything that it does doubled. Instead of just hitting the first enemy now, it hits the first 2 enemies. Instead of just poisoning the last enemy, it will now poison the last 2 enemies. Definitely a lot more viable. He used to be considered the dead dragon troop that no one would bother ever using on dragon teams, but now he's actually not that bad, particularly earlier on in the game, since you can get that double poison, and it's basically like a Knight Coronet that poisons, just without the tankiness. And it does have fast trait, so it goes up even quicker if you happen to get it all the way traded, though for the most part, traits are still relatively useless on the troop. So next up, of course, all the orcs end up getting changed. Cyclops can now target a enemy. It used to only hit the first slot. Everything else about it is exactly the same, other than the fact that it now gains 3 attack whenever it takes damage instead of just the 1, because it used to have Fury, now it has Orc Fury, so it gains the 3 attack. Dark Song, now quite a bit reworked. It no longer does double damage to green troops. Instead, it deals damage to an enemy and decreases a random skill on them by 4, and if they are a orc or a daemon, it will steal 6 mana. Steal, of course, meaning that she'll take it and keep it for herself. You can only steal what they have, though, so if they have 4 mana, you will only end up stealing and getting 4 out of 12 mana instead of the 6 out of 12 from using that ability. She also now gains 2 magic every single time that she every single time that she takes damage to her life. Like, all of them trigger based on that, which also makes Groshnak quite a bit stronger as well now. Drake Rider, a really, really interesting change. First troop in the game to have a 100% chance to summon another troop, and it ends up summoning a Drake. Drake is coming in on Monday. It's a brown-yellow with pretty much the same ability as him, just slightly lower damage, and it doesn't have the convert. But for the most part, it's very, very similar to a Drake Rider, but yeah, it also has the 11 mana cost just like him. But yeah, loyal mounts, that will be coming on Monday, or at least the Drake, I mean, that will be coming with it. As far as traits, other than that, of course, it now has Orc Armor anytime it takes life, and now does that 5 additional armor. It also now does half damage to adjacents, just like Ketris the Bull now, so that will make it quite a bit more viable. This was also another one of those dragons that weren't really used within dragon teams, but now it probably will, most notably for its 100% chance to summon. The only way to get around this would be to stun it, and a lot of teams, particularly in something like Guild Wars, will not be using a or will not be using a stun, so that could be something annoying to put there. Pretty sure someone will try trolling with 4 of them in their team or something like that, particularly next week when it has a bonus, so we'll see what happens. Anyways, this one also has a buff, only change being that it now has the Orc Cunning, so 2 magic whenever it ends up taking any damage to its life. Next up we have the final few though, I believe, unless I skipped any. Nope, that should be all of them. I did skip a couple of them that had just status effects, and I ended up repeating all of them. What? But, okay. That's weird. Well, that is all of them then. The fail of not putting them in correctly and doing it in a weird order. But, wait, I had to have missed one. I didn't go over... Did I just do the same thing twice? Well, let me just go to Garnock. Fail. Well, easy ways to fix this. We go over to Garnock right now, and I'll just go over anyone that I haven't already done. That's weird. I mean, Groshnock. Why did I say Garnock? Okay, so I somehow skipped over one of these tabs. This is why I number them. Note to self, always remember to number them. That is exactly why. Okay, so which ones have I not gone over, which I did change? Oh, here's the one of the most notable ones. Garnock is actually useful. Gasp. First time ever. He is useful. He now deals 1 true damage to all enemies. Before he did 1 true damage to all allies instead of the 1 normal damage to all allies. This is a pretty big deal because on trait effects only trigger when they end up taking HP damage and not when they take just normal armor damage. So this will help out quite a bit with that, since it will trigger any of those kind of traits. Other than just the orcs, this will also trigger with things like Humility and Orb Weaver fully traded. Definitely going to be a really nice troop now. It now creates 7 red and 7 browns boosted by Orc for a maximum of 11 brown and red, assuming that your entire team is orcs. And the fact that he now summons a random orc will make that pretty easy to do as well. Instead of just summoning the normal orc every single time, it will now summon a completely random one. So you will definitely get something stronger than just the standard orc every single time. And on top of that, it now gains 50% mana, starting mana to all orcs. This trait has been coming into quite a few different types. Pretty sure every single type will eventually have it. It will be very annoying once dragons and daemons eventually get it. But they are slowly starting to do this, mainly to the weaker ones. So orcs, still not an excessive threat, but that 50% will definitely make them quite a bit more useful. And of course, again, Orc Armor now gains 5 armor whenever it takes life damage. On top of this, Krog the Dread got a slight buff. You no longer need purples to be able to summon its Daemon. It is now determined based on red gems. I wish they just would have completely removed this, maybe increased the mana cost to 18 and just made it a 100% chance, but this will at least make it quite a bit easier to do. You now can just do it with a Alchemist Hellcat loop, a Yarrow, or really any number of options that can actually create reds to the board to be able to summon a random Daemon. It was purple before, which worked absolutely horrible because the easiest way to do that would be with Giant Spider, and then that Giant Spider would summon something in that slot, and then it became basically impossible to actually summon with this thing. It also now has a 15 mana cost instead of 16, and it now has Impervious instead of whatever it had here before. So that's going to be quite interesting now. Impervious with a 5% chance to devour on skull damage. Wonder if it'll actually start being used again. You never know. If you do, Hellcat will definitely be the best thing you could ever synergize with that thing. Doesn't even need to be in loop, just a Hellcat in general to get those reds, or even Inferno King, since you'd be able to do the devour chances off of that. Next up, we have this little orc here, normal orc. He's completely changed as far as what he does. He now does Enrage. Quite a few stuff in the next kingdom will also have this new Enrage effect. But what Enrage basically does is it deals 1.5 times damage and ignores enemy traits for a single attack. This will be pretty good against things like Gorgolfa, which tends to be used in First Lock, Pristine X, any of the Agiles, the new Dexterous, and the added troop, and basically anything with annoying traits that could stop skulls will end up going straight through them, and yeah, will be pretty good as far as that amount of damage that it does. You can combine it with stuff like Hunter's Mark and probably even get one-shots out of it. It gains 21 attack, or attack based on magic, +1, transforms green to brown to boost the effect at a 4-1, and then does the Enrage, as I mentioned. Next up, we have, I believe that was all of them then. So yeah, that was all the final little ones that I forgot to cover right there. So yeah, that is all the troop changes. If you do want to refund any of the troops, I believe typing in refund still works to bring them. Never mind, that does not work. Oh wait, never mind, I'm in Groshnock right now and there's none there. Let me reset that, then go to refund. What? Okay, wait, let me do this. Refund, if I can spell refund correctly, fail. Refund. Ah, that's weird. It doesn't bring them up. Let me go to famine then, because I know 100% for sure famine is refundable. So let's see. Is there no way to refund anymore? Huh. They said that in the post that there is an ability to refund, but it would appear that they forgot to add a refund button. So they will definitely get around to doing that. Pretty sure if you contact support directly, if you did want to refund it, they could probably do that too. But yeah, there's no refunding button here unless I'm missing exactly where it is. Pretty much every single option. They did say it was refundable, but anyways, yeah, famine would probably be the main thing you would want to refund if you do happen to have it fully traded. I'm personally not going to bother because I already have everything upgraded, but since famine is in the what's it called, the Apocalypse Kingdom thingy, there's really no point in having it upgraded if you're not going to be using it, because it's not actually upgrading any of the kingdom levels, you know, the level stars that you have on every single kingdom. Since it's not actually affiliated with the kingdom, you're not going to be getting any bonus whatsoever. So if you're not going to be using it, might as well just refund it, because there's no point in just holding on to it with its traits when you could be using those trait stones for something else. Anyways, that's all of the troop changes. I did not go over just like a few of the very small ones. Like for example, Black Beast now cleanses its enemy before it devours it, just so barrier doesn't get away. There was a couple troop type changes, but all of them were really minimal, the ones I didn't go over. But anyways, if you still have any questions about it, feel free to leave it in the comment section below. I know that console had slightly different changes, but for the most part, they were all exactly the same. So if you still need help with any teams, still don't know what to use, feel free to leave that in the comment section below as well. Anyways, thank you all so much for watching, and have a wonderful day. Goodbye, everyone.